The night had fallen heavy over the animal hospital. Outside, the rain tapped steadily against the windows, a soft, rhythmic sound that filled the otherwise silent corridors. Inside the emergency room, the air was thick with tension. Machines beeped quietly, their lights blinking like distant stars in the dark. The metallic scent of antiseptic mixed with something fainter, something sadder: blood. On the cold examination table lay a kitten, no more than a few weeks old. His fur was soaked and matted, his tiny body trembling with each shallow breath. His eyes were barely open, clouded and unfocused. He looked like a shadow of life, something fragile and fading. The veterinarian stood beside him, arms crossed, his face tight with concern. The nurse adjusted the oxygen mask gently placed over the kitten's face, her movements slow and careful, as if afraid that even a whisper of pressure might break him. "He's lost too much blood," the vet said in a low voice. "He's barely hanging on." The shelter worker who had brought the kitten stood near the door, his coat dripping onto the floor. His eyes were red, not just from the cold. "I found him in a box," he said, voice cracking, "next to a dumpster. He was the only one alive." The nurse looked at the monitor. The numbers were low, too low. "We need a transfusion, now." The vet shook his head. "We don't have any feline donors tonight, and even if we did, he's so small. I don't know if it would be enough." The monitor beeped again, slower this time. The kitten's chest barely moved. Then, from the hallway, came a soft sound, nails clicking against tile, a collar jingling faintly. A golden retriever puppy, fluffy and golden like sunlight, trotted down the corridor beside his mother and their human. They had come for a routine checkup, nothing serious, just a wellness visit. But the puppy paused. He sniffed the air. Something was wrong. He didn't know what, but he could feel it. The scent of fear, of medicine, of something fading. He turned his head toward the slightly open door of the emergency room. His eyes met the kitten's, just for a second, one full of life, the other slipping away. The puppy tilted his head. Something stirred inside him. Curiosity, concern, a strange pull he didn't understand. Inside the room, the nurse's voice broke the silence. "There's one thing we could try," she said hesitantly. "It's not standard, it's risky, but in emergencies, we've used canine blood for feline transfusions, just to buy time." The vet frowned. "It's not ideal. It could cause a reaction, and we'd need a donor who's calm, healthy, and strong." The nurse glanced toward the hallway. "What about him?" The vet looked out. The puppy sat just outside the door, ears perked, eyes wide. His mother stood protectively beside him, watching everything. "He's too young," the vet said. "Too small. It's dangerous." The puppy's human stepped forward. "But if it's the only chance..." The vet hesitated. "We'd need to run tests. And even then, the risks are high." The mother dog stepped closer, sniffing the air. She looked at her pup, then at the kitten. Her body was tense, her eyes alert. She didn't understand the science, but she knew something was happening, something important. The puppy was taken to a side room. He didn't resist, but his tail was low, and he trembled slightly as the nurse lifted him onto the table. She stroked his head gently. "You're a brave little one," she whispered. Blood was drawn. He was weighed, examined, checked for any signs of weakness. The vet calculated the maximum amount of blood that could be safely taken. Back in the emergency room, the kitten's condition worsened. The monitor beeped erratically. His breathing slowed. The shelter worker wiped his eyes and whispered, "He was the smallest of the litter, but he kept crying when I found him, like he still believed someone would come." The puppy whimpered as the needle approached, but the nurse was gentle. She held his paw, whispered to him, and his mother licked his ear from the side, trying to calm him. The vet paced. The shelter worker watched through the window, hands clenched around a crumpled adoption flyer. The mother dog let out a low growl, not of anger, but of worry. The test results came back. The puppy was healthy. The vet exhaled slowly. "We can do it, but only a small amount. He'll be weak afterward, vulnerable." The puppy's human knelt beside him. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. The puppy looked up, then turned his head toward the kitten, who had been brought closer. Their noses almost touched. The kitten didn't move, except for a faint twitch of his paw. That was enough. The mother dog was gently led to another room to keep her calm. The puppy was placed on a soft table. The nurse held his paw, whispering soothing words. The needle slid in. Blood began to flow. The puppy breathed faster, eyes wide. But he didn't struggle. His human stayed close, fingers brushing his ears. The shelter worker watched, barely breathing. When the vet gave the signal, the collection stopped. The puppy was wrapped in a blanket and laid on a bed nearby. He was tired, but safe. Now, everything depended on the kitten. The transfusion began. Drop by drop, the puppy's blood entered the kitten's veins. The vet and nurse watched the monitors. At first, nothing changed. The room was silent. Then, a beep, a little stronger. Another. The heart rate climbed, slowly, steadily. The kitten's chest rose and fell with more strength. His tiny body, once limp, began to stir. The nurse covered her mouth, eyes shining. The shelter worker let out a shaky breath. The vet, usually so composed, allowed himself a small smile. Hours passed. The kitten opened his eyes. Not just flickers. Real, focused movement. He tried to meow. A sound came out. Weak, but alive. The nurse wrapped him in a warm blanket and carried him to the puppy's bed. The puppy, still drowsy, lifted his head. He sniffed the kitten. The kitten leaned forward, touching his nose to the puppy's. They stayed like that for a long moment. No words, just breath, connection. The mother dog returned. She rushed to her pup, sniffing him all over, making sure he was safe. Then she turned to the kitten. Her eyes softened. She licked his head once, gently. The room filled with quiet joy. The humans exchanged looks of relief and gratitude. The shelter worker whispered, "Thank you," over and over. The vet looked at the puppy. "He reminded me," he said softly, "why I became a vet." They discussed the kitten's future. He would need care, special food, monitoring, but he had a chance now, a real one. Days passed. The kitten grew stronger. He wobbled when he walked, but he walked. The puppy regained his energy, eager to play. The mother dog watched over them both. The shelter worker spoke with the puppy's human. "They've bonded," he said. Maybe they belong together." No decision was made yet, but something had begun. One night, the hospital was quiet again. The puppy and the kitten slept side by side, breathing in sync. The nurse walked the halls, checking rooms. She paused at their door and smiled. Then, a sound. A door slammed open. Footsteps rushed in. A small stretcher rolled down the hall. Inside a clear box was a tiny hamster, trembling, breathing too fast. The nurse's smile faded. She turned and ran toward the emergency room. Monitors beeped. Lights flickered on. A new life in danger. A new story beginning. Back in the quiet room, the puppy and the kitten slept on, unaware. But the bond they had formed, the courage, the sacrifice, would echo in the halls of the animal hospital for a long time to come. If you enjoyed the story, let us know by liking and subscribing to the channel. We'd also love for you to leave a comment telling us which city you're listening from and which part of the story touched your heart the most. If you can, share our story with someone who needs this dose of love and hope. You mean so much to us, and we thank you for being part of this community of reflection and love. Thank you so much, and see you next time.